That afternoon, I saw Nicole Warren do something most people in our building only heard about later. She stood at the end of the third-floor conference room, behind glass walls, with snow pressing against the windows behind her, and signed off on the first round of job cuts. I was not supposed to be near that room. I was there because one of the ceiling vents outside finance had started rattling again, the same vent I had written up 6 times since October. So I had my ladder open, my tool bag at my feet, and half the executive floor pretending not to notice me. That was how things usually worked at Northstar Industrial Systems. People in suits moved fast, people in boots moved around them, and everybody acted like the building held itself together. Nicole did not look like the kind of woman who needed anyone to hold anything together for her. She wore a dark coat over a gray suit, her hair pulled back tight, her face calm in that way that made people lower their voices when she passed. I had seen vice presidents turn into school kids around her. Not because she shouted. I had never heard her shout once. It was worse than that. She listened like she was measuring the useful part of every sentence. Inside the room, the CFO was talking with both hands open on the table. HR had folders stacked in front of them. A board advisor in a navy vest kept tapping a pen against his notebook. Nicole said something I could not hear through the glass. Then she looked down, signed the last page, and slid it across the table. Nobody celebrated. Nobody even relaxed. That told me enough. I went back to tightening the vent housing, but my jaw stayed locked. By 5, the whole building knew. Not names yet, but numbers. First wave. More possible by Thursday. People stood by the coffee machines whispering like the walls had ears. In maintenance, my supervisor, Dale, stared at his phone for 10 minutes without blinking. Could hit us too, he said. Everything hits us eventually, I told him. He gave a short laugh, but it did not land. I had been at Northstar 11 years. We made control systems and large heating components for commercial buildings, plants, power substations, places people did not think about until something failed. My job was keeping our main campus running. Boilers, chillers, pumps, doors, panels, frozen lines, roof units, whatever decided to quit at the worst time. Nicole knew my name because 6 months earlier I had refused to close a repair ticket on Building C. The official fix was new insulation, fresh paint, and a sensor reset. The real problem was a failing heat exchanger that was going to leave 2 production labs cold as soon as winter hit hard. I wrote it up. Purchasing denied it. I wrote it again. Facilities management told me to stop escalating. So I took pictures, pressure logs, temperature readings, and sent the packet up one more level. It landed in Nicole Warren's inbox. 2 days later, she came down herself, heels clicking across a concrete floor dusted with salt, and asked me, "Are you the one who keeps saying this is not cosmetic?" I said, "Because it isn't." Her eyes narrowed, but not like she was offended. More like I had finally said something useful. I showed her the readings. She asked 4 sharp questions, understood all 4 answers, and approved the repair before lunch. She also told my director that next time someone buried a real systems issue to protect a quarterly number, they could explain it to her directly. After that, she remembered me. I knew because when she passed me in the lobby, she did not say maintenance. She said, "Bartley." That night, around 8:30, I was home in Delano, west of the cities, trying to convince my daughter Rosie that peas counted as food even when they touched the noodles. "They're green bumps," she said, pushing them with her fork. "They're tiny vegetables. They're bump vegetables. That's still vegetables." She looked at me like I had personally betrayed her. Outside, the storm had gone from annoying to serious. Snow blew sideways past the kitchen window. The back porch light kept turning the flakes into white streaks. I had already shoveled once, and you could not tell. School alerts were coming in. Roads were getting worse. The house had that deep winter quiet, except for the furnace kicking on and Rosie humming to herself while she separated every pea from the rest of dinner. My phone rang with a number I recognized only because it had called me once from the executive office. I almost let it go. Then I answered. "This is Julian." A pause. Wind hissed on the other end. "Mr. Bartley, it's Nicole Warren." I looked at the stove clock, then at Rosie, who had frozen with a noodle hanging off her fork. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to call you at home." People like Nicole did not apologize unless something was wrong. "My car has failed on a side road off Highway 55. I'm west of Plymouth, maybe near Greenfield. Roadside assistance is delayed. My driver is unavailable." Local towing says they're backed up for hours. I stood up before she finished. Are you warm? For now. That means no. It means the heat is declining. I grabbed a pen from the counter. Send me your location. Stay in the car unless you smell anything hot or see smoke. Keep the exhaust clear if the engine runs at all. It won't. Then don't keep trying it. Another pause. I heard the pride in it. She hated this call. She hated meeting the person she was calling. But she still made the call because the situation mattered more than her pride. I remembered you lived in that direction, she said. From the building C emergency. Text me the pin. Rosie slid off her chair. Daddy, I covered the phone. I have to help someone stuck in the snow. Can I come? No, you're staying right here. With who? Mrs. Bloom next door for 20 minutes. Then I'll be back. That was what I believed when I said it. I called Mrs. Bloom, who came over in snow boots and a cardigan, carrying knitting like she had been waiting for a weather-based emergency all evening. I kissed Rosie's hair, told her I would be quick, and took the truck. The roads were ugly. Not dramatic in a movie way. Just Minnesota ugly. Low visibility, half-cleared lanes, wind pushing the truck sideways, everyone either driving too fast or crawling with their hazards on. By the time I turned off toward Nicole's location, the road had narrowed to 2 pale tracks between dark fields. Her car was easy to spot because the hazards were weakly blinking through the snow. A black luxury sedan sat angled on the shoulder, already building a white ridge around the tires. I pulled in front of it, left my lights on, and walked back with my hood tight around my face. Nicole opened the door before I knocked. The first thing I noticed was that she was dressed for a heated garage, not a roadside in February. Good coat, wrong boots, thin gloves, no hat. Her face was composed, but her hands were stiff. Come on, I said. Bring your bag. I can wait with the vehicle. No, you can't. She looked at me, and for 1 second I thought she might argue. Then the wind shoved snow between us, and she stepped out. I got her into the passenger seat of my truck and cranked the heat. She held her hands near the vents without rubbing them, like even warming up had to be done with control. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Roads are closing behind us. I have a room reserved downtown. I looked through the windshield at nothing but white. Downtown is not happening. There are hotels near Maple Grove. Full, dark, or not worth getting stuck trying. Her jaw shifted. Then what is your recommendation? My house is 20 minutes from here in good weather. Tonight maybe 40. It has heat, food, and my daughter asleep in her room, assuming she didn't talk Mrs. Bloom into letting her reorganize the pantry. Nicole turned her head slightly. Your daughter? Rosie. She's 5. I don't want to intrude. This isn't an invitation with candles and guest towels. It's a storm plan. That got the smallest reaction from her. Not a smile. Almost. She looked out at her car fading behind the snow. All right. The drive back took almost an hour. She did not make small talk. I respected that. She made 2 calls, both short, both controlled. One to report the car. One to someone named Martin, telling him not to move on deeper reductions before she reviewed the packet again. Her voice stayed level, but I could hear the edge under it. When we finally pulled into my driveway, the porch light was still on. Rosie's paper snowflakes were taped crookedly in the front window. A pink sled leaned against the garage. The shovel I had left by the steps was already half buried. Inside, the house smelled like chicken soup, crayons, and wet mittens drying over a vent. Mrs. Bloom rose from the couch. Rosie was asleep under a blanket with one sock off and a stuffed rabbit under her chin. Nicole stepped in behind me and stopped just past the doorway. I saw her take it in. The boots in a messy row, the chipped kitchen table, the drawings on the fridge, the unpaid bill under a magnet, the soup pot still on the stove, the small warm life of the place. For the first time since I had known her, Nicole Warren looked like she had no idea where to put her hands. And I understood right then that I had not just brought my CEO in from the snow. I had brought her somewhere she had not been in a very long time. Sorry about the mess, I said, because that is what people say when a CEO walks into a house where a 5-year-old has recently eaten dinner. Nicole looked at the crooked paper snowflakes in the window, then at the pile of boots by the mat. It isn't messy, she said. That was not true, but I let it go. Mrs. Bloom came over and touched my sleeve. She woke once, asked if you were bringing home a snowman, then went back out. Rosie was curled on the couch with her mouth open, her stuffed rabbit pressed under one cheek. One bare foot stuck out from under the blanket. "Thank you," I told Mrs. Bloom. She looked past me at Nicole, polite but curious in the way neighbors can be when something unusual walks through your front door wearing a coat that probably cost more than your furnace. "This is Ms. Warren," I said. "She got stranded near Greenfield." Nicole held out a hand. "Thank you for staying with Rosie." Mrs. Bloom shook it. "In this weather, everybody belongs indoors." That was the whole speech. Then she wrapped her scarf, told me to call if the power went, and stepped back into the storm like she had been born in it. I locked the door behind her and stood there for a second listening to the wind push against the siding. Nicole had not moved. "You can hang your coat there," I said, nodding at the hooks by the door. She looked at them like it was a test. One hook had Rosie's purple snow pants on it. Another had my old Carhartt jacket. There was a reusable grocery bag hanging off the third. Nicole carefully placed her coat over the back of a kitchen chair instead. "All right," I said. "That works too. I don't want to disturb your system." I almost laughed. "My system is mostly not stepping on crayons." She looked down. There were 3 crayons under the table. I picked them up and dropped them into a coffee mug already full of them. "You hungry?" "No, thank you." "You cold?" "I'm fine." "Those are different questions." She gave me a look then, the one I had seen in Building C when a director tried to explain why a repair could wait. "I could eat something small," she said. I warmed soup on the stove and put bread in the toaster. Not fancy bread. The kind Rosie liked because it had a picture of a bear on the bag. Nicole sat at the kitchen table like she had been assigned a seat in a place where she did not know the rules. Her phone buzzed every 30 seconds. She turned it over, face down. "That bad?" I asked. It's never good when everyone discovers urgency at the same time. Layoffs will do that. Her eyes lifted to mine. I did not apologize. I had not said it to be brave. It was just sitting between us already, bigger than the table. She folded her hands. "The first round was approved today." "I heard. I assumed you had." I set a bowl in front of her. "People are scared. They should be concerned." "They're scared." That landed differently. She looked at the soup and did not answer. Rosie stirred on the couch before either of us could say more. Her eyes opened, sleepy and unfocused, then fixed on Nicole. "Daddy," she whispered loudly, "there's a lady." "I know. Is she the snowman?" "No. This is Nicole." Rosie sat up, hair smashed on one side. "Do you want soup?" Nicole blinked. "I have some. Thank you." "Daddy makes it with too much carrots." "It has normal carrots," I said. "It has tall carrots." Nicole looked into the bowl, serious as a lab inspector. "They do appear tall." Rosie nodded like she had found an ally and slid off the couch. I expected her to be shy. She was not. Rosie had 2 modes with adults: hide behind my leg or immediately assign them a role. Nicole, somehow, got the second one. "Are you sleeping here?" "Rosie," I said. Nicole glanced at me, then back at her. "Only until the roads are safe. You can have my princess blanket, but not Bunny." "That seems fair." Rosie shuffled into the kitchen and climbed into the chair beside her. She smelled like sleep and strawberry shampoo. We ate like that for 10 minutes. Rosie asked Nicole if she had kids. Nicole said no. Rosie asked if she had a dog. No. Cat? No. Fish? No. Rosie looked truly troubled by that. "What do you have?" Nicole looked down at her hands. "A lot of meetings." Rosie made a face. "That's not a pet." "No," Nicole said quietly. "It isn't. After dinner, I washed dishes by hand because the dishwasher had quit 2 months earlier and I had not gotten around to fixing it." Nicole stood up with her bowl. "You don't have to," I said. "I can rinse a bowl." The way she said it told me she had been told not to touch simple things for too long. So I handed her the sponge. She rolled up her sleeves and stood beside me at the sink. Rosie dragged a chair over and supervised. Outside, the storm hit the windows so hard the glass clicked in the frame. Then the lights went out. Everything stopped. The furnace hummed once, then went quiet. The fridge shut off. The kitchen fell into a heavy dark broken only by the gray-white glow from the snow outside. Rosie grabbed my pant leg. "It's okay," I said fast. "Generator might kick, or it might not. We've got the backup heater." "I don't like when the house disappears," Rosie said. Nicole did not move at first. Then she crouched down carefully, bringing herself level with Rosie. "The house is still here," she said. "We just have to find it slower." Rosie stared at her. I stared too. That was the first thing Nicole had said all night that did not sound managed. I got the lantern from the mudroom. candles from the cabinet, and the propane heater from the basement. I cracked the window the way I was supposed to, checked the detector, and moved everybody into the living room where the heat would hold better. Rosie pressed herself against my side on the couch, but after a while she crawled toward Nicole and lifted one edge of the blanket. Nicole looked at me for help. I shrugged. She's offering. Nicole sat stiffly at first, one arm around Rosie like she was afraid a wrong move would break her. Rosie leaned into her anyway. The candlelight softened the hard lines in Nicole's face. Without the office lights, without the phone glow, without a room full of people waiting for her to decide things, she looked younger and more tired at the same time. "Tell the one about the mouse and the cereal," Rosie said. "That is not a real story," I said. "It is. It was one Cheerio under the fridge. It had a mouse feeling." Nicole's mouth moved. This time it was almost a real smile. "So I told the story wrong on purpose, with a very proud mouse king living under the refrigerator and stealing one Cheerio at a time." Rosie corrected every third sentence until her voice got slower, then softer, then stopped. Her head slid against Nicole's arm. Nicole stayed frozen. "You can breathe," I said. "I am breathing. Not much." She looked down at Rosie. "She trusts easily." "Not everybody." "Why me?" "I don't know." That answer seemed to bother her more than any accusation could have. Later, when Rosie was asleep again, I carried her to bed. Nicole followed with the lantern. Rosie's room was all small socks, picture books, and glow stars stuck badly to the ceiling. Nicole stood in the doorway while I tucked the blanket around my daughter's shoulders. On the dresser was a framed photo of my wife, Anna, holding Rosie when she was still a baby. Nicole saw it. She did not ask right away. Back in the kitchen, I made hot chocolate on the camp stove. She sat at the table with both hands wrapped around the mug. "Your wife?" she asked. "Anna." "I'm sorry. 3 years now." She nodded once, not with pity, which I appreciated. "What happened?" she asked. I looked at the dark window. I usually hated that question. From her, for some reason, it did not feel like gossip. She got sick fast, faster than we could understand it. One winter, she was making fun of my ugly hat. Next winter, it was just me and Rosie. Nicole's face changed, but she did not make a performance out of sadness. "I built routines after that," I said. "Breakfast, daycare, work, groceries, laundry. Same things every week. It helped Rosie. Helped me too, I guess. But sometimes I think I made the house stable and forgot to come back into it." She looked at her mug. "My father was the opposite," she said. "No routines. No stability. He ran a machine shop until he lost it. Bad contracts, bad debt, worse pride. I was 16 when I learned that adults could smile at dinner and still know the bank was taking everything." "That why you became good at cutting?" Her eyes snapped up. I should have backed off. I did not. "You asked," I said. She held my stare for a long second. "I became good at keeping places alive." "Maybe both." The wind filled the silence for us. Finally, she said, "Today I signed papers that will hurt people. I know that. I also know what happens if the company misses debt covenants and the board replaces me with someone who does not care whether the place survives past the next quarter." "I believe you." That surprised her. "I don't think you enjoy it," I said. "I think you're used to standing far enough away that the pain comes through as numbers." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "My job requires distance." "Some distance, maybe. Not blindness." She looked away first. The power stayed out all night. I slept in the recliner. Nicole took the couch under Rosie's princess blanket, which barely covered her knees. Sometime before dawn, I woke and saw her sitting up, looking at the family drawings on the fridge in the weak candlelight. She did not know I was awake. Her face was open then. Not soft exactly, just unguarded. Like something in the house had reached a place she normally kept locked. Morning came gray and quiet. The storm had slowed, but not stopped. Drifts covered the lower half of the back door. My phone had one bar, then none. Nicole's had nothing. "Looks like you're stuck with us a little longer," I said. She glanced toward the couch, where Rosie was waking under a pile of blankets. Rosie opened one eye. "Pancakes." "That's not how weather reports work," I said. "It is today." So I made pancakes on the camp stove, uneven ones, because the pan heated too fast in the middle. Nicole poured syrup for Rosie and used too much. Rosie looked delighted, like Nicole had understood the main rule of childhood. After breakfast, Rosie insisted we build a snow castle in the yard. I told her it was too cold. She said castles needed cold. Nicole watched us argue like she was observing a negotiation with no legal framework. We found extra snow pants in a bin, an old hat of Anna's, and my flannel shirt to put under Nicole's coat because she still looked cold. The shirt was too big on her and made her seem strangely real, standing in my mudroom while Rosie tried to teach her how mittens worked. Outside, the world was bright and buried, the kind of snow that made every sound smaller. Rosie stomped paths through the yard while I shoveled a space near the porch. Nicole stood carefully at first, then knelt and packed snow into a bucket because Rosie ordered her to. "No, the wall has to be strong," Rosie said. "Bad snowmen might come." Nicole pressed the snow harder. "Then we need structural integrity." Rosie nodded. "Yes, strong integrity." I laughed before I could stop myself. Nicole looked up, and for the first time, she laughed too. Not much, not loud, but enough that Rosie grinned like she had won a prize. By afternoon, the castle had 3 crooked walls and a pinecone flag. We came in wet, cold, and hungry. Nicole helped hang mittens over vents that were not blowing heat yet. She did it wrong, and Rosie corrected her. Nicole accepted the correction like it mattered. While Rosie colored at the table, I checked the battery radio. Closures everywhere. Crews working. No good travel yet. Nicole stood beside me near the counter. "The man in Building C," I said quietly. "Tom Bloom. Not related to my neighbor. He's on that first list, isn't he?" She went still. "That's confidential." "That means yes." She said nothing. "His wife has treatments every other Friday. He swaps shifts and never complains. Marcy in Assembly just had twins. Ben O'Rourke has been there 22 years and can hear a pump fail before the sensor catches it. People like that don't show up in a spreadsheet as anything but cost. I know their tenure. You don't know them." Her face tightened, but this time it was not anger. It was defense trying to stay up. I lowered my voice. "You know what happens when we patch a boiler instead of fixing it? It looks cheaper for a while. Then it fails when the building needs it most. People are the same. You can keep cutting and calling it discipline, but at some point you don't have a company. You have a shell with a logo." Rosie looked up from her drawing. "Daddy, what's a shell?" I turned. "Something empty." She thought about that, then went back to coloring. Nicole stared at the table, at Rosie's crayons rolling near her hand, at the soup pot, at the little house holding its warmth by habit and stubbornness. I could see the words had reached her. I could also see she hated that they had reached her here, in my kitchen, where she could not hide behind glass walls. That evening, just before the power came back, Rosie handed Nicole a drawing. It was 3 stick people beside a crooked snow castle. Me, Rosie, and a tall woman in a blue coat. Above us she had written, with help from nobody, "Our house." Nicole looked at it for a long time. Rosie leaned against her knee. "That's you. I see that. You can come back when it's not snowing." Nicole swallowed once. "That's very kind." "It's not kind. It's just our house." The lights flickered on then. The fridge hummed. The furnace woke. Heat moved through the vents with a low rush. Nicole did not seem relieved. She looked around the kitchen like the returning light had not restored the old world, but exposed how impossible it would be to pretend she had never sat in the dark with us. And I knew, watching her hold that drawing like it was something fragile, that going back was not going to be simple for her. By the second morning, the storm had stopped acting like it owned the whole state. It was still cold enough to make the inside of the windows fog at the corners, and the roads were still a mess. But the sky had opened into that flat pale blue you get after a hard Minnesota snowfall. The kind that makes everything look calm, even when everybody knows the calm is just the cleanup starting. I was outside clearing the driveway when Nicole came out wearing my flannel under her coat again. She had her phone in one hand. That was how I knew the outside world had found her. The first time I saw her in my house, she looked misplaced. Now she looked pulled in 2 directions so hard it almost showed in her shoulders. "Signals back?" I asked. "Yes." "Bad?" She looked toward the road, where the plow had left a wall of packed snow at the end of the driveway. "The board meeting has been moved up to this afternoon." I leaned on the shovel. "Thursday, you said." That was before Dumont decided delay would create uncertainty. I did not know Dumont, but I already did not like him. "He wants deeper cuts," she said. "How deep?" She tucked the phone into her pocket, like putting it away could make the number less real. "Another 9% across operations and support." I actually laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Operations and support. That's a clean way to say people who keep the place standing. It is not that simple. It never is when you're the one saying it. Her face sharpened. There she was again. Nicole Warren, CEO, back in the room even though the room was my driveway, and she was standing in borrowed flannel with snow on her boots. You think I don't know what those words mean? She asked. I think you know exactly what they mean on paper. I have spent 20 years keeping companies from collapsing. And how many houses have you sat in after the collapse? That hit harder than I meant it to. I could see it. Her mouth closed. The wind moved loose strands of hair across her cheek. Rosie's face appeared in the front window behind her, pressed to the glass, watching us with both hands flat like we were a show. Nicole noticed and looked away first. I have to get back, she said. I figured. My assistant found a tow company that can retrieve the car later. Martin is sending a driver as far as Plymouth, but the interstate is still slow. If I can get to the park and ride, I can take the train in from there. I started shoveling again, harder than I needed to. Julian. I did not answer. I did not create the debt load. I did not demand the acquisition that overextended the company. I inherited a damaged structure and kept it alive. I turned on her. And now the damaged structure gets fixed by cutting Tom, Marcy, Ben, and whoever else doesn't sit close enough to the conference room. You are making this personal. It is personal. Her eyes flashed. A company with 1,300 employees cannot be managed like a kitchen table. No, but maybe it shouldn't be managed like nobody at the kitchen table matters. Write in the comments. Was I wrong to speak to my CEO like that? Or did somebody finally need to say what those job cuts really meant? She stood very still. I knew I had gone too far for an employee. Maybe too far for a man standing in his own driveway with his boss. But the weird part was, I did not care much right then. Not because I wanted to hurt her. Because she had sat beside my daughter in the dark. She had held Rosie's drawing like it mattered. And now I could see the old machine in her starting up again. Damage control. Clean language. Controlled loss. I had watched that kind of thinking eat good people from a distance. I did not want to watch it eat her up close. She looked down at the shovel in my hand. You think I can walk into that room and tell them I changed my mind because I met your daughter? No. Good. I think you can walk in there and stop pretending the only numbers that count are the ones Dumont likes. She looked at me then, not angry now. Tired. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's just different from impossible. For a second, there was only the scrape of another neighbor's snowblower starting somewhere down the block. Then Rosie opened the front door and yelled, Are you fighting or talking? Talking, I called back. You sound like the toaster when it burns. Nicole pressed her lips together. I could not tell if she was holding back a smile or something else. Rosie came out wrapped in her coat, hat crooked, bunny tucked under one arm. Nicole, you forgot your picture. She marched across the porch, stepped straight into snow up to her knees, and held out the drawing from the night before. Nicole took it carefully. Thank you. You have to keep it so you remember the castle. I will. And us. Nicole's hand tightened on the paper. I looked away because some moments did not need another adult staring at them. Getting her to Plymouth took longer than expected. The main roads were open, but everything moved slow. Cars sat half buried along shoulders. Plows rumbled past with their yellow lights turning in the bright morning. Gas stations were crowded with people in heavy coats, buying coffee, salt, batteries, whatever they should have bought before the storm. Rosie stayed with Mrs. Bloom again, happy because that meant cartoons and cinnamon toast. Nicole rode beside me in silence for the first few miles. She had changed back into her own blouse and coat, but she still wore my flannel under it because her clothes had not fully dried. The sleeves stuck out at her wrists. I pretended not to notice. Her phone kept lighting up. Martin, Elaine HR, Dumont office. Board packet revised. CFO urgent. She answered only one. I understand, she said, voice flat. No, do not send the final notices. I said do not send them. Because I'm telling you not to. I will be in the room by 1. She ended the call and closed her eyes for 2 seconds. That was HR? I asked. Yes. They already have the packages ready? Of course they do. Of course, I said. She turned toward me. Say it. I already said enough. No, say what you're thinking. I kept both hands on the wheel. I'm thinking how fast the machine moves once it's pointed at regular people. Funny how slow it gets when an executive bonus or a board fee is on the table. She did not answer. I expected her to defend it. She did not. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out a leather notebook, and clicked a pen. What was his name again? She asked. Whose? The man in Building C. Tom Bloom. She wrote it down. Wife in treatment. Yes. Marcy. Jensen. Assembly. Twins. Her husband drives for a medical supply company. She wrote that too. Been a work, I said. 22 years. If you cut him, you'll hire 2 contractors and still call him when they can't figure out the old pump loops. Her pen stopped for a second. Then she kept writing. This isn't about individual exceptions, she said. I know. Then why am I writing them? Because people who talk about headcount should have to picture heads. She looked out the windshield. At the park and ride, the lot had been plowed badly, leaving ridges of dirty snow between the spaces. The train platform was half full of people who looked tired before the day had really started. Nicole checked the schedule, then looked back at my truck. This is enough, she said. You should get back to Rosie. I put the truck in park. She did not get out. For a moment, neither of us moved. The heater blew between us. Her phone buzzed again and again, angry and small in her hand. Julian, she said, I don't know if I can win this. I know. That's your encouragement? I don't lie to Rosie either. That did get a real smile, quick and gone. Then she looked down at the drawing Rosie had given her, folded once and tucked inside the notebook. If I lose, they may replace me. Then make them say what they're replacing you for. She looked at me. For refusing lazy math, I said. Her eyes stayed on mine a little too long. There was something in that silence that neither of us touched. Not with words, not with hands. But it was there, real enough that I felt it in my chest. Then she opened the door, and the cold rushed in. Keep the flannel, I said. She glanced down like she had forgotten she was wearing it. I'll return it. I know. She stepped out, shut the door, then turned back once before walking toward the platform. I watched until she got on the train. That should have been the end of my part in it for the day. It was not. By the time I got home, Rosie was at the kitchen table drawing another snow castle, bigger this time, with what looked like security guards and a dragon. Nicole went to her meetings? She asked. Yeah. Is she coming back? I took off my boots slowly. I don't know, kiddo. Rosie frowned. But she has your shirt. Then maybe she has to. Kids can say things like that and go right back to coloring. Adults have to stand there and pretend their whole chest did not shift. I tried to get back to normal. I cleared the walkway, checked the furnace filter, returned calls from work. Dale said the campus was reopening late, skeleton crews only. He also said everybody was waiting for the final list. You hear anything? He asked. No. But you picked her up, right? I looked toward Rosie, who was now putting purple stickers on Bunny's ears. Yeah. So she was stranded in a storm. That's all. Dale went quiet. Just asking. I know. After I hung up, I stood in the mudroom longer than I needed to. Her boots had left melted tracks on the mat. One of her hairpins sat on the small bench by the door. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, then set it beside the bowl where I kept loose screws and house keys. It was strange how fast a house could feel different after someone left it. Not empty exactly, just aware. Nicole, meanwhile, was somewhere between Plymouth and downtown Minneapolis, and later she told me what happened on that ride. She sat on the train with wet cuffs, borrowed flannel under a designer coat, and Rosie's drawing open on her lap. Around her, people drank coffee from paper cups and scrolled through weather updates. Nobody knew who she was. Nobody cared. She was just another woman heading back into the city after a storm. For the first time in a long time, that helped her think. She opened the revised packet on her tablet. 9% deeper cuts. Consolidation of 2 production lines. Freeze on maintenance capital except critical failures. Deferred Building C upgrades. Severance estimates. Legal exposure. Investor talking points. She read the phrase labor rationalization and thought of Rosie asking what a shell was. Then she started crossing things out. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Nicole did not become a different person on that train. She became more herself, but pointed in a better direction. She built numbers. First, executive compensation reductions. Not symbolic. Real. 25% salary reduction for the senior leadership team for 1 year, deferred performance bonuses, board fee suspension until debt targets stabilized. Second, vendor renegotiations. Northstar had 3 major supply contracts due for renewal. She knew 2 vendors would rather extend terms than lose the relationship. Third, asset deferral. A planned executive office renovation and investor presentation center could be killed immediately. That alone did not save many jobs, but it mattered because it was stupid to cut technicians while building nicer glass rooms. Fourth, property consolidation without worker cuts. There was least administrative space in Bloomington that could be closed, with staff moved hybrid or into underused campus space. Fifth, retraining and internal transfer. Some roles were under pressure, yes, but the controls division was short-skilled people. Cutting experienced workers while paying recruiters 6 months later was not discipline. It was amnesia with a finance label. Sixth, attrition. Retirements, open roles, and voluntary reduced schedules could cover more than the CFO had admitted, because nobody had asked for a version where executives took pain first. By the time the train reached Target Field, she had a rough framework. By the time a car took her from there to her building, she had called Martin and told him to pull every retention cost model from the last 5 years. He said, "The board packet is already locked." She said, "Unlock it. The meeting starts in less than 2 hours." Then type faster. That was Nicole. Same sharp edge. Different target. She went home first because she had to change. Her penthouse was in the North Loop, high enough to see the river and the white roofs of warehouses below. Everything in it was clean, quiet, and expensive. Stone counters, low furniture, art chosen by someone with a calm voice and an invoice. She stepped inside and realized there was no smell. No soup. No crayons. No wet mittens. No child asking strange questions. No furnace clicking like an old dog waking up. Just warm air and silence. She stood there longer than she meant to. Then she took off her coat. My flannel came with it. She held it in both hands. It was too large, faded at the elbows, and probably had wood smoke in the fabric from last fall. She could have folded it and put it in a bag to return. Instead, she opened her closet. Inside were suits arranged by color, shoes in even rows, coats spaced exactly apart. She hung the flannel at the end. It looked ridiculous there. She left it anyway. Then she changed into a black suit, pulled her hair back, put Rosie's drawing in her leather folder, and walked back out into the city with a plan that could still fail. But it was a plan, not an apology, not a speech, not a feeling she could afford to outgrow by Monday. A real plan. At 12:47, my phone buzzed while I was making Rosie a grilled cheese. It was a message from Nicole. No greeting. Just, "What was the boiler patch at Christmas?" I knew exactly what she meant. I typed back, "South Mechanical Room. 2 years ago." Line froze because replacement heat trace got denied. Ben and Malik patched it Christmas Eve. Took 6 hours. Building stayed open. 3 dots appeared. Then, "Malik last name?" I answered, "Harris." A minute later, "Thank you." I stared at those 2 words until Rosie leaned over my arm. "Is that Nicole?" "Yeah." "What did she say?" I looked at the grilled cheese burning slightly in the pan. "She said thank you." Rosie nodded like that settled everything. "You should say you're welcome." So I did. And then, because I could not help myself, I sent one more message. "Don't let them make empty sound smart." For a while, nothing came back. Then my phone lit again. "I won't." That was all. But I believed her. At 1:06 that afternoon, Nicole Warren walked back into North Star Industrial Systems looking exactly like the woman everyone expected her to be. Black suit. Hair pulled back. No visible panic. No wasted movement. The lobby was still tracked with dirty snow from people coming in after the storm. The big glass doors kept dragging cold air across the floor every time they opened. Security nodded too fast when she passed. People in coats and boots turned their heads, then turned away like they had not been looking. Everybody knew what that day was. They might not have known the exact numbers, but they knew enough. You can feel it inside a company when something is about to drop. Conversations get shorter. Emails get cleaner. Managers stop making eye contact in hallways. People who spent 20 years fixing things start wondering if their badge will work tomorrow. Nicole did not stop at her office first. She went straight to the executive conference room, where Martin was standing outside with a tablet in one hand and the look of a man who had aged 3 years before lunch. "They're already inside," he said. "Good. The revised slides are incomplete." "They're enough. The CFO is not aligned." "I know." Dumont is furious. Nicole paused with her hand on the door. Then at least someone came prepared. Martin blinked at her. She opened the door. Later, she told me the room was too warm. That was the first thing she noticed. Too warm and too bright, with the Minneapolis skyline washed pale through the glass. Around the table were the people who had been pressing her for weeks. Board members, legal counsel, the CFO, HR, two investor representatives, and Adam Dumont at the far end like he owned the air. Dumont was in his late 50s, silver hair, expensive watch, calm smile. The kind of man who used phrases like discipline when he meant other people losing sleep. "Nicole," he said, "glad you made it through the weather." "I did. Then we can move quickly." "No," she said, setting her folder on the table. "We're going to move correctly." That got the first shift in the room. Elaine from HR looked down. The CFO, Daniel Bush, rubbed one hand over his mouth. Dumont leaned back. "The package you received this morning is no longer my recommendation," Nicole said. Daniel looked up sharply. "Nicole." She held one hand slightly, not dramatic, just enough. "The proposed additional 9% reduction in operations and support is rejected." The room went quiet in a way she knew well. Not shocked quiet. Threat quiet. Dumont's smile stayed where it was. "Rejected by whom?" "By management." "You are management." "Yes." "And you are also accountable to this board." "Yes." "Then explain why. After weeks of telling us liquidity pressure required action, you now appear to be retreating from action." Nicole clicked her remote. The first slide appeared. Not the old slide. No soft blue graphics. No tidy human resources language. No labor rationalization. The title read, Operational Preservation Plan. "I am not retreating from action," she said. "I am changing the target." Daniel shifted in his chair. He had numbers in front of him. He had always had numbers. But Nicole had rebuilt the argument so fast that even he looked unsure whether to fight her or follow her. She started with cash. That mattered. She knew if she started with people, Dumont would call it sentiment and kill it before the room could breathe. So she talked debt service, covenant timing, receivables, vendor exposure, lease obligations, and projected savings. She showed where the company was actually bleeding and where the old proposal only looked clean because it pushed the mess into the next quarter. Then she put up the executive compensation line. "Senior leadership salary reduction of 25% for 12 months, she said. "Deferred bonuses. Board fees suspended for 2 quarters. No exceptions, including me." One board member, Linda Cheney, sat forward. "That was not in the prior model." "No, it should have been." Dumont gave a small laugh. "Symbolism. $4.6 million in immediate annualized savings is not symbolism. It is not enough." "I didn't say it was." Next slide. Vendor renegotiations. 3 major contracts. Extended payment terms. Volume commitments adjusted instead of canceled. She had already spoken to 2 suppliers from the car. One had pushed back. One had not. Both were still talking. Next slide. Kill the executive renovation. Cancel the investor presentation center. Freeze outside consulting except compliance-critical work. Consolidate the Bloomington lease and move administrative staff into underused space on the main campus. That one made Dumont's jaw tighten. "The presentation center is part of the capital confidence strategy," he said. "It is a glass room for people who already know how to find coffee." A few eyes lifted. Nobody laughed. Not openly. But the room changed half an inch. Then she moved to labor. Not soft. Not pleading. Specific. "Cutting experienced operations staff reduces this quarter's expense and increases next year's repair exposure, contractor dependence, overtime, recruiting costs, training time, and production risk." She clicked again. A chart came up showing retention cost against replacement cost for specialized maintenance, assembly, controls, and building systems roles. Daniel finally spoke. "These numbers are rough. They are conservative. They are incomplete. They are more complete than a severance estimate pretending institutional knowledge has no value." He went red, but he did not answer. Nicole looked around the table. "Ben O'Rourke has been with this company 22 years. He can diagnose a pump loop problem in building C faster than a consultant can find the mechanical room. Malik Harris kept the South Mechanical Room online Christmas Eve after a denied heat trace replacement froze the line. Marcy Jensen in assembly trains new hires on controls housings because the manual is wrong in 3 places and everyone knows it except the manual." Elaine from HR looked up then. Her face changed. Nicole continued. "We call them support because the spreadsheet requires a category. In real life, they are load-bearing." Dumont tapped his pen once. "This is exactly the kind of anecdotal thinking that gets companies into trouble. No, Nicole said. Bad math wrapped in clean language gets companies into trouble. His smile disappeared. There she was. Not softer. Not weaker. Not some woman who had sat in a snowed-in kitchen and forgotten how to fight. She was sharper than before. She just was not fighting the same people anymore. Dumont leaned forward. Let me be plain. The market will not reward hesitation. Your plan asks investors to accept lower near-term margin improvement in exchange for a theory of morale. No, it asks them to accept lower executive comfort in exchange for operational continuity. That is a slogan. It is a risk model. Your chair is not guaranteed, Nicole. I know. The room felt that one. Even people who wanted her to compromise looked at her differently. She opened her folder then. Inside was the printed plan, her notes, and folded behind them, Rosie's drawing. She did not show it to the room. She did not need to. It was not evidence. It was not a prop. It was just there, touching the edge of her hand while she spoke. For years, she said, I have made the argument many of you expect me to make today. That survival requires distance. That people are cost centers first and people second. That a company can cut deeply enough to reassure capital and then somehow rebuild trust after the fact. She looked at Daniel, then Elaine, then Linda Cheney, then the rest of them. I no longer believe that is discipline. I believe it is deferred failure. Dumont said, What changed? She could have told him nothing. She could have said the storm delayed her, nothing more. She could have hidden behind a consultant phrase. Instead, she said, I got close enough to see what our decisions actually touch. That was all. Not dramatic. Not personal in a way they could use against her. But true. Daniel looked down at the packet again. We still need savings. Yes, Nicole said. And this plan delivers them. Not as fast. Fast is not the same as sound. Linda Cheney turned a page. What about the first wave? Nicole's mouth tightened. That was the question. The first wave will be reviewed role by role before notices are released. Some reductions may stand. Some will convert to transfers, retraining, open position freezes, voluntary schedules, and delayed attrition. No final notice goes out today. Elaine exhaled so quietly most people missed it. Dumont did not. You are exposing this company to indecision. No, Nicole said. I am refusing to let panic make permanent decisions. The fight went on for nearly 2 hours. That was the part people never picture. Real change does not happen because someone gives one good speech and the hard people suddenly discover a heart. Dumont pressed every weak spot. Daniel questioned timing. Legal warned about inconsistent criteria. HR worried about communication leaks. Another board member asked whether Nicole had become too close to the employee impact. She answered all of it. Not perfectly, not without strain, but she knew the company better than Dumont did. She knew the plants, the contracts, the customers, the backlog, the weak divisions, the ones that could still grow if leadership stopped stripping them for parts. She knew where money was hiding because she had spent her whole career finding it. She knew which cuts were real and which were lazy. By the end, the room had split. Dumont wanted a vote to reject her revision and proceed with the deeper cuts. Linda Cheney asked for a vote to adopt Nicole's plan as the management recommendation, pending 48-hour finance validation and immediate hold on notices. That phrase mattered. Immediate hold. Daniel hesitated when his name was called. Nicole looked at him, not begging. He looked older than he had that morning. Then he said, Finance can validate within 48 hours. That was not a full endorsement. But it was not a no. The vote passed by 1. Dumont closed his folder slowly. You bought yourself 2 days. Nicole looked at him. No. I bought the company 2 days to do its job. When she stepped out of the conference room, her legs almost failed. Martin followed her into the hallway. You won. Not yet. You changed the direction. For now. He looked through the glass at the people still inside. They may come for you after validation. They may. You knew that before you walked in. Yes. He studied her like he was seeing the weather damage and the new thing under it. Was it worth it? Nicole did not answer right away. Down the hall, near the elevators, 2 assembly supervisors stood with their phones in their hands. Dale was there too. Tom Bloom. Malik Harris. People must have heard that notices were paused because news had already started moving in that quiet, electric way news moves through a workplace. Nobody clapped. This was not that kind of place. Tom just looked at her and gave a small nod. Nicole returned it. That was enough to nearly break her. She went to her office, closed the door, and stood behind her desk without touching anything. The office was beautiful. Snowy view. Awards on the wall. Clean lines. Everything arranged to communicate control. For once, it looked less like success and more like a place someone could disappear inside. She took out her phone. I was at home trying to fix the dishwasher while Rosie sat on the floor beside me, handing me the wrong screwdriver every time. My phone buzzed. Nicole. Notices paused. Revised plan passed for validation. 2 days. I read it twice. Rosie leaned over. Is it her? Yeah. Did she win? I thought about that. She won 2 days. Rosie frowned. That's not a lot. No, I said. But sometimes it is. I typed back. Good. Keep going. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Nicole. I used Ben's Christmas Eve story. Me good. Nicole. Dumont hated it. Me. Even better. For a minute. Nothing. Then. I still have your flannel. I looked at the empty hook by the door. Me, I know. Rosie grabbed my arm. Tell her she can bring it back with cookies. I'm not saying that. Why? Because adults don't just demand cookies. Rosie looked personally disappointed in adulthood. I set the phone down and went back under the dishwasher. But I could not focus. The machine was still dead, my wrench was sliding, and all I could think about was Nicole standing in that boardroom with Rosie's drawing in her folder, making people say out loud what they usually hid inside clean words. Later that evening, after I got the dishwasher running for exactly 12 minutes before it quit again, headlights turned into the driveway. Rosie saw them first. She came. Rosie, don't run. She ran. I followed her to the door as Nicole stepped out of a black car, carrying a paper bag in one hand and my folded flannel over her arm. She looked tired in a way no suit could hide. Not broken, just used up. Rosie opened the door before I reached it. Did you bring cookies? Nicole stopped on the porch, then looked at me. I raised both hands. That was not for me. Nicole looked back at Rosie and lifted the paper bag. Yes. Rosie turned to me with the smug face of a child whose worldview had been confirmed. Nicole stepped inside. For a second, none of us knew what to do. The house was warm. The lights were on. The storm had passed, but snow still covered the yard in high clean banks. The snow castle leaned sideways near the porch, wounded but standing. Nicole held out the flannel. I brought this back. I took it. Our hands touched for less than a second. Thanks. I washed it. That was risky. It might be load-bearing. She laughed, quiet and real. Rosie dug into the bag. Chocolate chip. After dinner, I said. But Nicole brought them now. Nicole is not in charge of dinner. Rosie looked at Nicole for confirmation. Nicole shook her head. Your father is right. Rosie sighed like betrayal had returned to the house. I made coffee. Nicole sat at the kitchen table again, but differently this time. Not like she was waiting for instructions. Not like the chair belonged to someone else. She noticed the new drawing on the fridge, the one with the bigger castle and the dragon. Is that me? She asked. Rosie nodded. You're fighting the dragon meeting. Nicole looked at it carefully. That is accurate. I leaned against the counter. How bad is it really? She did not pretend not to understand. The plan passed for validation. The deeper cuts are stopped for now. Some jobs may still go. I won't lie about that. But not like before. Not blind. Not easy. Your job. At risk. Rosie looked up. Your job has a risk? Nicole turned to her. Sometimes when you tell people no, they get angry. Rosie nodded. Daddy says no all the time. That explains his calm confidence, Nicole said. I almost smiled. After Rosie went to bed, Nicole and I stayed in the kitchen. No storm trapping her there this time. No failed car. No closed roads. She could leave whenever she wanted. That made the silence heavier, but cleaner. She folded her hands around the coffee mug. I don't want you to think I fixed everything. I don't. Good. I don't need you to be a miracle. She looked at me then. I continued before I lost the nerve. I just needed to know you saw it. Really saw it. I did. I know. She looked toward the fridge, where Rosie's first drawing still hung under a magnet shaped like a strawberry. I built my life around not needing much from anyone, she said. It made me useful. It also made me hard to reach. I sat across from her. You were reachable in the dark. Her eyes came back to mine. That was the closest either of us had come to saying the thing underneath all the other things. She did not look away this time. I don't know what I'm doing here, she said. In my kitchen? In this version of myself. I nodded slowly. Nobody does it first. You sound certain. I'm not. I just have practiced being forced into a life I didn't choose. She understood that. I saw it in her face. I'm not Anna, she said softly. The room went very still. No, I said. You're not. I would never want to step into something that belongs to her. You couldn't. That's not how it works. Her eyes shone a little, though she did not let anything fall. And Rosie? Rosie invited you into a drawing before either of us knew what to do about it. Nicole laughed once under her breath. Then she reached across the table, slow enough that I could move away if I wanted to. I did not. Her hand covered mine. It was not a grand moment. No music. No perfect words. The dishwasher made an unhealthy clicking sound behind us. A plow scraped somewhere outside. Rosie coughed in her sleep down the hall. But Nicole's hand was warm. And for the first time in 3 years, I did not feel like warmth was something I had to explain away. She looked at me and said, I want to come back when it's not snowing. I squeezed her hand once. Rosie will expect cookies. I'll negotiate. Good luck. She's tougher than your board. Nicole smiled then, tired and real and completely unpolished. The next weeks were not simple. The finance validation was ugly. Dumont tried to reopen the deeper cuts twice. Daniel fought her on timelines, then slowly became useful when he realized she was not asking him to fake anything. Some people still left the company. Some had to. But Tom stayed. Marcy transferred into controls training. Ben and Malik got approval for repairs that had been deferred too long. Building C finally got the work it should have had before winter. Nicole stayed CEO, but not untouched. She lost allies, gained different ones. The board watched her harder. Employees did too. As for us, there was no clean fairy tale jump. She came by with cookies the next Saturday. Rosie made her inspect the snow castle, which had become more of a snow lump by then. Nicole called it structurally compromised, and Rosie told her that was rude. A week later, I fixed a leaking pipe in her penthouse and made fun of the fact that nothing in her kitchen looked like anyone had ever cooked in it. She said she owned pans. I said owning and using were separate categories. We moved slowly because we had to. Because she had a company full of people watching whether her change was real. Because I had a daughter who did not need adults drifting in and out of her life like weather. Because grief does not disappear just because someone new sits at your table. But Nicole kept showing up. Not perfectly. Not softly all at once. Sometimes she still answered emails like they were incoming fire. Sometimes she used corporate phrases at dinner, and Rosie told her to talk normal. Sometimes I pushed too hard, and she shut down for an hour before coming back and saying what she meant. But she came back. That was the part that mattered. One night in March, after most of the snow had turned gray at the edges, Nicole stood in my kitchen drying dishes while Rosie drew at the table. The dishwasher still did not work right, and I had stopped pretending it would. Nicole looked at the window, at our reflections in the dark glass. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. The storm. She nodded. I handed her another plate. Yeah. I used to think I got stranded, she said. Like it was a failure. Bad timing. Bad road. Bad car. And now. She looked toward Rosie, who was coloring Nicole into another family picture without asking permission. Now I think maybe I had been stranded for years, she said. I just finally stopped somewhere warm enough to notice. I did not answer right away. I put the last dish in the rack, wiped my hands on a towel, and stood beside her. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, Rosie hummed off key, the furnace ran, and the house held together in all its ordinary, imperfect ways. Nicole leaned her shoulder lightly against mine, not needing rescue, not offering rescue, just there. And that was how it began for real. Not with the storm, not with the boardroom, not even with the first time she walked through my door. It began when she chose, with every chance to go back to being unreachable, to stay close enough to feel what her choices touched. And when I finally let myself believe that a house could hold grief, a child, a future, and someone new at the same table without losing what had come before.